Hey, it's Jonathan. I wanted to share with you some things that I have learned over the years in working with kids with special needs. And some of these are really important points because I find that not all parents know about this stuff. And I'll tell you, most of the kids that I've worked with are on more of the mild end of the autism spectrum. They have Asperger's or kids with really debilitating anxiety. I mean, it's pretty severe stuff, but they're usually, they're verbal and they're able to communicate, but they also have a lot of skills that really need to be developed, and they're really lagging behind in many different ways. And it's usually a pretty crisis type situation when I start working with them. I'll give you an example that illustrates this well. It was years ago, but this mom brought her son to me, and he had just started middle school, and basically in every area of his life he was struggling. I mean, the school was pretty much fed up with him. I mean, he was having these outbursts at school. He would get overwhelmed, he'd get overstimulated, and he'd scream out, he'd say like, "If you don't be quiet, I'm going to kill you." And it was really starting to scare some of the other kids. He was lashing out at the other teachers. He wasn't really listening to anything that they were saying, and it was causing a massive disruption in that school environment. And then when I talked with this kid, I could see that he was definitely way behind on a lot of skills. I mean, his ability to tolerate frustration and regulate his mood, and certainly his social abilities, his social skills, everything from maintaining eye contact to basic simple greetings and basic conversation. I mean, all this stuff was way behind. And his mom would tell me stories how he only ate like 3 kinds of food. I mean, literally like 3 types of food. And that's all he would eat. And every time she would try to get him to eat something else, he would just throw the biggest tantrum and just really kind of, well, most people would feel is really bizarre, but just like this really, just big meltdowns, put it that way. And then the only thing he wanted to do was to watch video games and organize his collections. And anything she tried to get him to do, help out or clean something up or transition to doing something else, or if they had to go somewhere, he would just have these massive meltdowns. And they were more like a meltdown like a 2-year-old would have. And that was what was going on. When I really dug into the situation, though, I found some things that were occurring that just weren't helping this kid out. And this mom, she didn't know. One of them was he had a very clear diagnosis of Asperger's. No one had told him. The parents hadn't told him. The school hadn't told him. No one had educated this kid as to what was going on. And I know this is a tricky area. I've talked to some parents and they resist me. I'm like, well, I don't want to shame my kid. I don't want to tell them that something's wrong with them. I don't want to label them for life. But actually what they end up doing is handicapping this kid. I mean, they just think about it. If you had any kind of disease, if you had diabetes or anything for that matter, you would want to know what it is so you can know what is going on with me, and then what do I need to do? When do I need to take insulin? How do I need to change my diet? What do I need to do to be able to adjust my life to have the best chance of having quality of life? And what we see over and over, what I see over and over, is the kids who have been educated, they've been told, you have Asperger's and this is what it is. And it's nothing that is wrong or bad about you. It just means you're going to have to work harder to learn some things. The kids that are told that they have Asperger's or they have autism or whatever it is that they have, they end up doing much better because they can get on board, they can understand it, and it doesn't have to be a shaming thing. But this kid, no one had told him that, and surprisingly, even the school hadn't even touched that topic. And the other thing, and this goes with a huge point that I have with kids with special needs, the school's program, and I'm not even putting blame on school. A shout out to you special ed teachers and helpers in schools. I mean, you have one of the toughest jobs in the educational system, and total respect, total kudos to you guys. But as some of you know, there's some school systems that do a much better job with special education and helping these kids than others. And the big difference that I see is the schools that are really focused on just avoiding meltdowns versus the ones that are really trying to teach skills. And that goes for the parents too. It's getting into this pattern of making accommodation after accommodation and after accommodation. And I know kids need accommodations, but like this kid that I was talking about, I mean, every time that he had a meltdown or a situation they perceived was going to be a meltdown, they would isolate him. They let him go to a different room. They let him go calm down, which is great, but there was never a follow-up to teach him what he could do better and how he could learn. There was no real follow-through plan, and that's what was going on in that home too. Where parents like, oh, my kid has autism, so I can't hold them to the same standard. True, but at the same time, they still need to learn those things. So if there's a point that I could just really make succinctly, is you need to make sure that your kids are still learning the skills. Even if they have special needs, they still need to learn skills. They still need to learn how to communicate. They still need to learn how to interact. They still need to learn how to tolerate frustration and how to be cool with being uncomfortable, meaning that when something makes them uncomfortable, you don't just avoid it. Yes, you understand it takes them longer to learn, but they still need to learn that thing. You hear what I'm saying? It can't just be this pattern of avoidance, but that was what was going on in this school with this kid, and it wasn't helping him out because he was just avoiding. Here's another point. This is kind of the same point, but on the other end of it. I've had plenty of parents who are bringing their 20-year-old son, their 25-year-old kid who has autism, who has Asperger's, who has this debilitating anxiety, to where they had all these accommodations in school, and they basically, I know this is a sensitive thing to say, but it's the truth. They had the easy way through school. I mean, they were not really held to anything that really taught them and prepared them for life. Let me tell you something. When your kid turns 18, there is going to be very little support compared to what they were getting before that. And that is a big area that I work with a lot of families. They bring in these kids who are 18, 20, 25 years old, and they are completely not equipped for life. But guess what? I mean, here's kind of how the world does it. Like, yeah, that's great. You had all that help earlier, but now you're 18 and no one's going to be looking out for you. Now I know there's some communities that do a much better job of helping kids, adolescents transition, kids with special needs from that adolescence to adulthood. But in general, that's not really out there. And I see this massive gap that develops because kids have not learned the skills that they need to know. I mean, we're talking like common sense life stuff. Like everything from how to be able to hold down a job and how to be able to have a conversation and how to really push themselves. Let me give you some good news, okay? There have been some situations that I have worked with where there's a kid, I even have a doubt. I have my doubts. I mean, their behavior, and they're so far behind, and there's so much that they have to learn, and there's this massive gap between where all their peers are and where they are. And I'm like, I don't know if they're really going to be able to make it. But we did lots of hard work year after year, and these parents, they put them in the occupational therapy. They put them in the special ed programs. They spent the time working with them, and what you see is over time they learn. It does make a difference. Whatever age your children are, it's not too late to start. The programs you put them in, the work that you do with them, the help that you get them, it really does make a difference. It's the difference between them having a very frustrating, difficult life and being able to really have a quality life, being able to function and to be a part of their community and their society and their job and everything else, and having a really good life. So I've seen some of these kids that I've worked with, and over the years, you really see them start to blossom. They learn the thing that you didn't think they were going to be able to learn. Sometimes they just impress you with how well they do. But here's the deal. You have to stay consistent with this stuff. And I'm not talking about being a perfect parent, because it's really frustrating. Kids with special needs, and you parents know what I'm talking about. kids with special needs, they really push back. You know, they have such a hard time learning these things, and as you're trying to teach them, man, you get the meltdowns, you get the extreme behavior, you get such hard resistance, and it's hard as a parent to keep with that. But you know, don't give up. It is totally worth it. And then I've seen these kids over the years, they get stronger, they get more skilled, they get better at this stuff. And I'm telling you, I'm not even lying to you, I've seen kids that I had my doubts about who are now in college, and they're doing great. They are doing amazing. I mean, they're getting grades, they're learning, they're socializing. I mean, yeah, they still have their struggles, they still have their challenges, but wow, going from here to there. And you know what the difference is? It's parents, it's educators, it's the people who didn't give up on them, who worked hard, who pushed hard. But they've got to learn. You've got to make sure that they are learning. They're learning the skills, the most basic skills, and then right on up. You know, here's the formula that I give parents. The things that they need to know, to be able to function, that they need to be able to know to make it in life, that's what you got to focus on. You know, it's like, what is next? What do they need to know? Do they know how to do this? Do they know how to handle money? Do they know how to have a conversation? Do they know, you know, whatever it is, that's what you got to work on so that when they're done, you know, keep the end game in mind. You know, when they're 18, when they're 20 years old, and now no one else is going to help them, have they learned those things? Have they learned it well enough? That's what you got to work on. So I felt like I got a little bit fired up there, but for some reason I really have a soft spot for these kids, and it makes a little bit of a passion too, because one, I know how hard it is. I have been in the office countless times with a parent who is crying because it is so hard, it is so difficult, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for them, and I have a soft spot for those parents because, man, their life is just hell at times, but they keep at it. And I want to encourage parents, and for these kids too, I know all the challenges. They are just so overwhelmed, but they are great kids and they want to do well. They want to move forward. They need extra help. They need extra attention, but it really pays off. So hey, let's all keep at it. You know, I'll keep doing what I can. You keep doing what you can for your kid. And for those of you who don't have a kid with special needs, but you've been listening long enough, probably because you know a parent who has a kid with special needs, step in there, encourage them, maybe tell them to take a look at this video and talk about it. You know, I know there's some things that I've said in here that people won't always agree with, but you know, we're all just trying to help. We're all trying to do our parts. Hey, your family needs you. Your friends need you. Your kids need you. Don't give up.